walking on the wild side, wide open every time, letting it fly. You can find me high on the mountaintop, floating down a river rock, living for the ride. If you really want room to run, I'll show you where to get it done. Step off the back porch, jump across the fence, don't let the barbed wire catch you in the pants. I'll be waiting in the bottom by the TomBob Creek. Come on, take a walk on the wild side with me.
Welcome to TomBob Outdoors and Friends in Wild Places. I'm Raleigh Cogan, your host, and today we're here in north central Pennsylvania in the dead of winter. As you can see, we're up here on state forest land, part of the Elk State Forest, and what an adventure we have today. And you think about animals in the wintertime. Animals deal with winter in a variety of different ways. Elk in the west migrate, mule deer migrate. They move off the mountaintops down into the valleys where the snow is more shallow, the temperatures are more moderate. Deer in Pennsylvania don't migrate. Elk in Pennsylvania don't migrate. They have to be able to handle whatever Mother Nature throws at them. If you have wings, you can get on the wing and you can fly south for the winter, survive it, do very well. Other animals, they adapt, they den, they hibernate. Today, we're going to take a look at a Pennsylvania black bear den. There's a sow and 3 yearlings in the den. Come on with us to the adventure of TomBob Outdoors. Take a look. Together. We know there's 3 yearlings because that's what was, and there were 3 cubs last year, so we got enough darts for those and for the mother, and 6 darts we're getting ready. You're not anticipating any misses, are we? It's better to have the dart now than we stand up there trying to make a dart while the bear's running away. You know, I hear you. So Mark, give us a sense of, you know, what we're talking about, a muscle relaxing here and how the bears react to it. Okay, well, you know, a lot of people think of a bear that's hibernating as being sound asleep, you know, that you could walk up to it and, you know, even potentially hand syringe it. Well, that's not the case. You know, bears are alert, they're aware of what's going on, they're capable of defending the den, they're capable of running from the den. So when we talk about true hibernator, that's not what we're going to see today. Well, physiologically, they're in hibernation. I mean, if you look at their blood profiles, if you look at their metabolic rate, if you look at all those physiological things that you can't see on the surface, they're different than a bear in the summertime. So what do you call it? You know, and there's a debate as whether that's really hibernation or not, but because it is different than a true bear in the summer, then physiologically it is a form of hibernation. It's just not what we think of as a dormant, sleeping, like a groundhog. Like a groundhog, exactly. Completely to sleep, or ground squirrel. Yeah. So they, you know, even though they're alert, they're looking around. The cubs are being born at that time. The females are grooming those cubs and nursing them, and all that's going on. They still are, in a sense, in a form of hibernation. But what I started to say is that because they can run, because they can defend the den and all those things, we have to immobilize them. So we actually use a cocktail of 2 drugs. The one is a true anesthetic, so it's, you know, they lose consciousness. The bear doesn't know what's going on. They're not aware of what's happening. There's some memory loss associated with that drug, so they may not even remember the darting process. And then the other drug is a somewhat of a sedative, a calming drug. So one is providing unconsciousness, pain relief, stuff like that, and the other one's providing some sedative at the same time. So they work. The 2 drugs work in synergy, you know, so that as a cocktail, you need less of both than you would need if you had either of those drugs separate. I mean, the goal here is to immobilize the female. Her collar needs worked on. Are you changing our collar today? Yeah, well, it needs to be readjusted for fit. There's a leather splice that holds the collar on that needs to be changed annually. So that we need to get our hands on her. But in some cases with yearling dens, the yearlings will just cower in the back of the den while you work on the mother. And as long as we can see that all 3 of them are still there, that they're still wearing their ear tags, then we don't necessarily have to immobilize them. We can account for everybody. The problem is if you look in there and you see that there's one missing, then you don't know who's missing. So then you have to be prepared to drug everybody to find out. Because one of the things we're interested in is survival. You know, we tagged these bears as cubs a year ago. We want to see who's alive still a year later. And so if they're all there, it's easy. But if one's missing, it gets a little more difficult.
So through mandatory check station during our hunting season, you have those records then, and
exactly.
you can cross-check it all.
Yep, those ear tags show up in the harvest. But there, you know, there's other things animals can die from that we don't see them through the course of the year, and so you've got the snapshot a year later to see who's still left.
From medical industry projects to the home project, powder metal affects literally every area of your life. It also affects the adrenaline projects. We supply the component part. You bring it to life. Continuous metal technology.
Gear up for another trophy hunting season with help from your friends at Roof Farm and Supply. Handguns, long guns, shotguns, muzzle loaders. You'll find them here new, or we also trade, buy, and sell used guns. Still can't find what you're looking for? Our staff will work with you to special order anything you need. We offer on-site gun repairs, gunsmithing, scope mounting, and hot bluing as well. Roof Farm and Supply carries top quality gun safes by Superior and Champion, and we'll deliver them to your door. Roof Farm and Supply. We're worth the drive.
Introducing the most unique fishing lure on the market today, the TomBob lure with scent fusion. What is scent fusion? Well, it's a proprietary process in which we infuse every microscopic pore of the lure with a fish attractant that makes it smell and taste just like live bait. This lure stinks. What does it look like? Success. You need this in your tackle box. Time after time, cast after cast. TomBob Outdoors. Check us out on the web at tomboboutdoors.com.
The Keystone Elk Country Alliance, combining an entertaining and educational experience with family fun. The leader in conservation education, improving habitat projects for elk and other wildlife in Pennsylvania's elk country. In the heart of the Pennsylvania wilds, the Keystone Elk Country Alliance, located at the Elk Country Visitor Center. To learn more, visit experienceelkcountry.com.
So this rock crevice has overhead structure. I mean, she's actually in and covered completely.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. Dodie has seen it, but you know, if it's the same one we were at a few years ago, it's a tent that's been formed by a slab of rock sliding down, and it has one opening in the front.
Years ago, we used to put nets over the entrances. Do you still do that?
We have a net.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll need it today.
Yeah. We got enough people, huh?
Yeah, we have used the net on this particular bear. And as you remembered, Raul, you know, you get a bear under a net, you know, it can be a real rodeo at that point. So we, if we don't, you know, it's anymore, we just don't.
Well, this is an adventure series, you know.
Anymore, my rule is, you know, at 20 pounds we start drugging bear. You know, anything over 20 pounds.
All right. So the female has got the radio collar on, so she's emitting a signal from that transmitter, and you're going to receive it here.
Yeah, think of it as your radio in your car. You can dial in whatever station you want to listen to that day. Each bear has a different radio collar with a different frequency, so we just dial in whatever one we're interested in.
Okay, so you've got a directional antenna here. It helps you kind of locate where she's...
Yeah, you can notice on these elements, you know, each element is progressively longer, and that allows it to be directional. When we hang a radio collar on a female bear, she almost never leaves the area she's born in. I mean, I bet, you know, Dodie could tell you where all the dens are from this particular bear over the years, and they're all within probably a mile of here. So when a female bear has cubs, her female cubs will grow up and live in the area her mother lived in. The males will disperse. So as long as you're female or you're radio collaring female bears, they're not that hard to find. You know, rarely do we have to get in.
So their home range is a lot smaller than males.
Yeah, you know, for a female it might be 4, 6, 8 square miles at most. You know, and when I say 8 square miles, that sounds like a lot, but a 2 square mile box is what? That's 4 square miles right there. So if you were in a 2 square mile box, you were standing in the middle. That's just 1 mile in any direction, and that's really not that much.
It's really not. No.
Yeah.
And so the males disperse a lot to get the gene pool spread out. And
exactly.
Yeah.
And we've put some radio collars on male bears in the last couple years for a different study, and we've seen some incredible movements. We have a bear right now that was radio collared in Johnstown that's now in Mercer County up near Grove City.
How many miles? That's well over 100 miles.
Oh yeah, we put a radio collar on a bear in State College last summer. That was over Christmas, was in Hancock, Maryland.
And these are yearling males.
The one in Mercer County is an exception. That happens to be a female.
Is that right?
She went there.
That's pretty unusual.
But the one in Hancock was a male. We put a radio collar on a male at the Scranton Airport 2 years ago. It was harvested at Raystown Lake in Huntington County. You know, that's
good hike.
That's 2/3 across the state, and it went through Potter County to get there. I mean,
Didn't make a direct route either.
No, it wasn't a direct route. So these have mortality sensors. And
explain how that works.
And so there's a little tube of a glass tube in here that has a metal bead in it, and as the radio collar is moving on the bear's neck, as the bear's walking around, that bead is rotating back and forth, and that will keep the circuit, the electronic circuit, in a particular mode. And in this mode, it beats about 1 beat per second, so about 60 beats a minute. You'll hear this pulse rate. If for some reason that ball ends up at the end of the tube for 6 hours at a minimum, if it stays in one position for 6 hours, then it goes into a different pulse rate, and it's 30 beats a minute, half the rate. So earlier when we heard that pulse rate on the receiver, that's telling us that that collar is active. It has moved at least once in the last 6 hours. If we'd have turned the receiver on and it was beating a lot slower, we'd have said that collar hasn't moved in 6 hours. So, you know, it's either a bear that's very dormant in hibernation, or it's a bear that has pulled the collar off and it's laying on the ground, or it's a dead bear.
So you know, approaching this den, that this sow is moving.
The collar, yeah. I mean, she has moved her head enough in the last 6 hours to keep that thing activated in a typical mode. And now this thing on the end is just a piece of saddle leather that we have made up at a local saddle shop. We dip them in neat's foot oil, and then we know from experience that that piece of leather will last about 2 years. It'll biodegrade and rot and crack in about 2 years, and this thing would fall off. This neoprene belting would last years, and we've had collars that have been laying in the woods for several years, and this has not begun to deteriorate. You know, it's not, the bears don't necessarily change much in size after they reach adulthood, but we just don't want it to wear a non-functioning collar its whole life.
Right.
So this piece of leather has to be replaced once a year, and the den is a good time to do it. You know, we know we can get our hands on the bear. So one of the things we'll do today is replace that piece of leather that holds this, that holds the two tails of the collar together.
I'd like to get a camera with you as close as you tell us we can, is what I'm getting to. I don't need to be there, but the camera, I'd like the camera to see as much as they can, but you got to tell us what's doable and what isn't.
So we'll get down there then, we'll get to the den. We'll get Dodie to show us where the opening is.
Don't worry.
And if it looks like there's only one opening, and it looks like the bear is pretty cooperative, you know, she's in the back and doesn't look like she's at a risk to run, I can wave you up a little closer.
Okay.
But we'll probably stop you, I don't know, what is it, 10, 15 yards, maybe hear those maple trees there.
That'll work.
To start, and then if I can get you a little closer, I will. It just all depend on what the bear's doing.
Okay, so what I'll ask you to do when you get close, you kind of size up the situation, and then you just work directly with Brad and our camera here and get him in close. I'll stay out of the way. You guys do what you need to do. But whatever we can get the lens into, we'd like to.
Visit shop.TomBobOutdoors.com for the best deals on all of your favorite TomBob Outdoors products. Check out everything from the TomBob lure with scent fusion technology to CTX and ITX projectiles, TomBob and CMT logo wear, and even the TomBob earrings. All this at one convenient location, shop.TomBobOutdoors.com. And don't forget to watch Friends in Wild Places Adventure Series on your favorite cable network.
From medical industry projects to the home project, powdered metal affects literally every area of your life. It also affects the adrenaline projects. We supply the component part. you to bring it to life. Continuous metal technology.
The Keystone Elk Country Alliance, combining an entertaining and educational experience with family fun. The leader in conservation education, improving habitat projects for elk and other wildlife in Pennsylvania's elk country. In the heart of the Pennsylvania wilds, the Keystone Elk Country Alliance, located at the Elk Country Visitor Center. To learn more, visit experienceelkcountry.com.
Our father started delivering heating oil to local Pennsylvania farmers and lumber yards in 1959. For 53 years, we've been family owned and operated. We've added a couple of trucks since then, a few more products to our line. But we're still committed to the same ideals that got us here. Commitment to family, community, and providing you with a quality product, on-time delivery, and customer service that is second to none. WG Satterley and Sons.
Hey, bud.
The experienced Pennsylvania Game Commission knows they must use extreme caution and care when handling these bears. They do everything possible to maintain the comfort and warmth of the bears during the medical exam and tagging process. They take great pride in ensuring the bear's health and well-being.
I'll put some light on it. Hey, that bear's going back the other way. Step in there quick. I want to take a look at how her breathing was doing again.
She's breathing better. I did her capillary.
It looked fine, yeah.
Not a whole lot of change in that.
I mean, she's all right. She's just getting old. Look at those teeth. But see how her gums are nice and pink.
What's the average lifespan for a bear in the wild?
Well, because we hunt them fairly heavily in Pennsylvania, you know, into their teens, 12, 13, 14's getting up there. How old can they live? We had one last year that was almost 37. So.
So we've got a lot of disturbance here today. We had to go in there and handle these bears and mobilize these bears. We did a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the best situation is that we can get all the bears back in the same position they were in the same nest that they were in. We'll actually make an effort to seal up the den. We'll probably pile some brush over the front of it. Because it'll be a while before some of these bears come out of it, especially the ones that were darted last.
How long do you think?
Oh, and you know, the adult female has now been, we're coming up on an hour and 15 minutes on her. So you got at least an hour for each of the yearlings yet.
And with her metabolism so slow,
yeah, we're approaching the end of that. So it's time to start putting them back in. We're going to make an effort to get them all back in the same position they were in before, get the den sealed up, and you know, before the weather comes down on them.
When they come out of the drug, they're right where they've started.
Yep.
All right. So, Mark, we just got a chance to show our viewers how you get in the den, how you handle these cubs and these yearlings and this sow. But let's explain a little bit about why you do it. I mean, you're tagging bears not just for, you know, to come back here and radio call and do what we did today, but give us a sense of population estimate.
Yeah, well, there's some real significant things behind all of this. I mean, there's two things going on. One is we're monitoring reproduction. We visited this bear a year ago when those cubs were newborn, and we want to assess them a year later to see how many are still alive. So we're assessing cub survival. We know one was missing today, so there was a litter of 3 a year ago, and now we're down to a litter of 2. So that
could be hunter harvest. It could be.
Well, we know it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't hunter harvest because we have mandatory checking and we look for ear tags in the harvest. So it was some other form of mortality other than hunting, and that's something we need to measure. We also are looking at age of first reproduction. How often does a female bear produce cubs in her lifetime? Is it every other year like she's supposed to, or does she skip years? And so that's all on the reproductive side. And then on the population monitoring side, we have to ear tag a sample of bears every year that we use for our population estimate. And we actually use what's called a mark recapture estimate. where we tag anywhere between 700 to 800 bears across the state.
The whole state?
The whole state, yeah.
7 counties, you're handling a lot of bears.
Well, about half of those are handled by conservation officers. So, Pennsylvania is unique in that a conservation officer's role is not only enforcing game laws, but also conducting wildlife surveys and things like that. And so about 300 to 400 bears will be captured and ear tagged by conservation officers. And then in our research projects, we'll tag another 200 to 300, maybe 300 some years. All of those tagged bears are out in the population mixing with untagged bears, and then come hunting season we look to see how many untagged bears there are for every tagged bear in the harvest. And once you know that ratio, you can back calculate how many bears must have been in Pennsylvania that year. And we do that on the statewide level and at the management unit level across the bear range.
The Keystone Elk Country Alliance, combining an entertaining and educational experience with family fun. The leader in conservation education, improving habitat projects for elk and other wildlife in Pennsylvania's elk country. In the heart of the Pennsylvania wilds, the Keystone Elk Country Alliance, located at the Elk Country Visitor Center. To learn more, visit experienceelkcountry.com.
From medical industry projects to the home project, powder metal affects literally every area of your life. It also affects the adrenaline projects. We supply the component part. You bring it to life. Continuous metal technology.
No, people at Continuous Metal Technology.
Working with the folks at Ballistic Products.
They do all kinds of checks to make sure ITX is the best product.
And then they rely on us to do the final check.
Trick Shot Penetrating Lubricant. It does the trick. Unlocks seized parts. Breaks rust loose. Lubricates and protects metals. Fights corrosion. Removes adhesives and grime. Non-flammable, non-toxic, and 100% biodegradable. Visit itdoesthetrick.com for more information or check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Proudly made in the USA.
There are 22 management units. We harvest bears from about 18 of them regularly every year. So we want that 700 bears to be spread throughout the state.
So you want a sample of tagged bears in each one of those management units?
Yeah, that's correct, yep. And there's actually a quota that is assigned to every conservation officer that says, in the coming year, we want you to tag this many bears. Because, we want that sample to be well distributed throughout the state.
Which gives you, then, confidence in your population.
Exactly. The more bears that we tag, the better the precision and the accuracy of our population estimate. If that estimate was to suddenly jump or suddenly decrease, we wouldn't know if that was a real change or something due to statistical chance. So we want as many bears as we can tagged on an annual basis, evenly distributed throughout the state, and then we have mandatory checking during the hunting season to look at those tags again.
All these data that were collected here today and data that you collect across the state, it's all computerized.
Yeah, we maintain an actual master database that has every bear that's ever been captured in Pennsylvania research projects since the late 60s, probably about 1968 is when we started. So if you notice, that bear now is what, about a 5-digit ear tag, in the 30,000 range. So there have been over 30,000 bears captured and ear tagged in Pennsylvania, of which she is just one of them.
Good. Now, from a conservation officer standpoint, I mean, as a biologist, you're handling bears in dens like this from a research standpoint. From a conservation officer standpoint, what situations would they get into?
Well, again, conservation officers in Pennsylvania are involved in a lot of research, wildlife survey monitoring. They capture bears annually throughout the summer. They can be nuisance bears, they could be research bears where there's no nuisance activity involved, just putting a trap out on the game lands.
Explain to us nuisance. What do you mean?
Well, bears are very intelligent animals, and they're very adaptable at living close to people. So we have bears that have moved into residential areas. We have bears that are denning under homes in some places in the state. There are more summer homes that are empty in the wintertime, but still the bear crawls under it. So if you take an animal that's very adaptable to being close to people and is very intelligent, and you set yourself up to have conflicts, knocking over bird feeders, knocking down garbage cans, we do have some crop depredation, just general, and just kind of ornery nuisance type activity, and some people are okay with that, and some people it's a complaint. So we have to deal with that as an agency.
Well, in a state with 12 million people, thousands of bears.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Our current estimates are around 18,000 bears in the state. Across nearly every county has bears in it. When you take 18,000 bears, spread them across the state this size that has 12 million people in it, there are bears near people every day. Most
of the time, people don't even know it's happening.
Exactly, and a lot of the incidents that occur are very minor. Somebody just doesn't understand what it means to see a bear in a residential area, or the bird feeder's damaged, or the garbage can's damaged. People being injured by bears just doesn't happen that often. It's a lot of these other kind of more minor things, but they still generate complaints that the agency has to respond to.
Okay, from a den site, this is about as remote as it gets, north central Pennsylvania, in the dead of winter. This is typical, right?
Yeah, I mean, in my career, I have never just wandered out in the woods and found a bear den. I mean, you would think with 18,000 bears, you would be finding dens all the time. It just doesn't happen. Bears rarely reuse a den. They'll make a new den every year. Now, is this typical? Sure, this is typical. It's a small cavity. It provides some shelter to the bears. But we also get some bears that just den right on the open ground. They build a nest that looks a lot like a bird's nest, and that's where they'll spend the winter. So they don't all have to look like this. But this is typical of a female that has young with her.
When people think about a den site, they think about rocks, they think of crevices. What they don't think about is a bear denning on top of the ground in a brush pile.
Yeah, every cartoon you've ever seen depicting a bear den shows some cave where you could walk in and out of it. I've never seen one that size. Most of them are like this, where you have to find the smallest guy in the group.
Right to get in there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's to the bear's advantage. And those large cavities just don't exist as frequently as cavities like this. So this is a typical den. We do see a lot of these types of dens, but we also see a lot of just a bear laying on top of the ground.
What was the most unusual den site you've ever seen? You mentioned denning under a house.
Yeah, when they den under houses, that's pretty unusual. Yeah. But we've seen some bears that have gone under houses that have broken down dryer vent hoses, and they're sitting there with the warm dryer vent air blowing across them all winter. We had one den under a pickup camper top. The homeowner had taken the camper top off his pickup truck in the winter to cut firewood, and set it on the ground, and a bear crawled through a broken window and gave birth to 3 cubs under that in the front yard. We've had them in culverts under major interstates. We've had them in abandoned cars in junkyards.
I've heard of them in the big round hay bales.
In hay bales, in crawling into sheds, in barns. Just about anything's possible, I guess, if you do it long enough.
Sounds good. Well, listen, Mark, we appreciate you and the Pennsylvania Game Commission bringing us along so we could show people this adventure here in northern Pennsylvania.
Well, I hope it's been informative, and I hope everybody's learned something. It's been my pleasure.
It's my pleasure as well. Our friends in Wild Places, thanks for joining us here in TomBob Outdoors, and we'll see you on the next adventure.